I eagerly awaited John's arrival the next day, images of his distraught form alone in his room having plagued me all night. Even though I knew he needed time to be alone, and he was grateful I left him, I still felt like I abandoned him when he needed me most. I had Mai to help me when I was down. At best, I left John with PBG, but if he didn't tell PBG anything, then I just left him to suffer alone. I twiddled my thumbs by my desk, turning every time I heard the door open. No. No. Not him either. PBG and John... Ah, shit. PBG and John were roommates. Shouldn't John be with him? Jeez, Hana, you're gonna get whiplash the way you're whirling around like that. You sure you're alright? Yeah, I'm fine. Everything is fine. Yet again, Mai knew better, but she didn't press the issue. Apparently after last night, if I didn't want to talk, she wasn't gonna make me. Not while we were in class, at least. When the warning bell played, I finally got up and crossed to PBG's desk. I needed answers.
PBG.
Hey, PBG?
Hey.
Hana, what brings you to this side of the room?
Well,
Did PBG not know? I needed to talk to John about something, but he isn't here yet. Is he... Oh, yeah. He said he wasn't feeling well this morning. He said he was just gonna stay in bed all day. He pursed his lips. John's been acting really weird since yesterday, though. That morning he was fine. I mean, you saw him. But when I got back from practice yesterday, he was in bed. He didn't even want to go eat. That's how bad he felt. But he wasn't coughing or anything either. I hope he's not depressed. Yeah, I hope not too. I tried to smile or do something to not raise suspicions, but PBG cocked an eyebrow at me. Hana, you wouldn't happen to know anything about this, would you? Me? John made me promise not to tell anybody, and I wanted to remain faithful to that promise. But this wasn't like telling Mai. PBG was one of John's best friends, and his roommate. If something was going on with John, PBG was the person most likely to notice, most likely to worry, most likely to be able to do something about it. What if I didn't tell him and something bad happened? But if John ever found out, I knew he wasn't going to like it. Uh-oh. Oh god, no! Oh shit, I don't know. I mean, like, if it was me, I would absolutely tell PBG, but... oh no, I don't know. No, tell PBG. You can't tell anybody. I wasn't even supposed to find out, I don't think, but I want you to be able to take care of him. PBG nodded gravely and bent towards me. I cupped my hand around his ear. Jacques broke. PBG snapped upright, a look of horror on his face. He wasn't in the room last night now that I think about it. Oh man, this is not good. You're not gonna tell him I told you, are you? PBG looked at me and then smiled as if he were holding a baby kitten. Oh! He patted the top of my head lightly. Of course not, I'm not stupid. I know you wouldn't want him to know, but thanks for telling me. I grumbled as I straightened my bow, smiling in spite of myself. I was glad I could rely on PBG. I'll try to just pretend I noticed it, even if I bring it up. If I even bring it up. The loss of a pet can be really hard. So I know what he's going through. Oh! PBG touched a hand to his neck, suddenly staring into space.
hey.
You okay? Sorry? Oh, anyways, I'll make sure to take care of him. Thanks for letting me know. Ow. Ow. No, thank you. I'm glad you're looking out for him. You're a good friend. PBG smiled and tipped his head back. Yeah, I know. I shoved him, giggling, then went back to my desk. Still, I wasn't comfortable with just leaving John alone for the day. As Miss Shizuka entered and started taking roll, I made up my mind. I had to go check on him. As soon as the bell rang, I shot out of my chair.
Hana, see you later.
Don't worry about me, I'll see you after lunch. I sped out of the room, evading students pouring into the hall, and turned away from the crowd towards Bluebell House. I passed the sign where John first stood and told me that we were in the same class, then speed walked past the field I got lost in that very first day at Asagao. If John was suffering on his own, I wasn't about to sit around and let him. John, it's me, Hana. You weren't in class today and I was worried, so I came to check up on you. Won't you let me in? There was only silence from inside John's room, and suddenly fear crept into my heart. John? John, you're not like sick or anything, right? You haven't done anything rash, right?
Hey.
John! The doorknob turned with a soft click and the door opened about an inch. I peered into the crack, unable to see anything but the blue walls of John's room.
John.
Again, there was no response. After a moment of hesitation, I gathered my courage and pushed the door open. John sat huddled in the center of the room, the blanket I laid over his shoulders the afternoon before drawn tightly over his body. It looked like he hadn't slept or even brushed his teeth since I last saw him. Even his clothes looked to be the same ones he was wearing the day I left him, his jacket smudged with oil from Jacques' gears. I closed the door softly behind me and sat across from him on the sofa, tucking my legs underneath me.
John.
His eyes were red and puffy. There was no doubt in my mind that he had been endlessly crying. I'd been there before. Though not exactly, I knew something of what he was going through. I reached into my backpack and took out a small bottle of water, sliding it over to him. For the first time, John responded to me. He grabbed the bottle and tried to twist the top open. His grip was weak, and after 2 failed attempts, he stared sadly at the bottle. How weak was he? Had he been eating or drinking at all since yesterday? I twisted the top off the bottle, then handed it back to him. Within a few gulps, the bottle was empty. My fears were confirmed. He probably wasn't eating or drinking. He thumped the bottle on the table, the hollow echo sounding loud in the silence of the room. Then, for the first time since I came in, he looked at me. I'm gonna quit the drama club.
What?
You're what? He held up a hand as if to solve my questions, glancing away. You don't understand. Jacques was my star, my queen. He was my everything. I can't go on without him. So I might as well quit. Nothing will ever be the same. John quitting the drama club was the most ridiculous thing I ever heard of, especially with the depth of extremes his own drama queen personality could get to. Still, if John set his mind on something, there was little I or anybody else could do to dissuade him. I bit my lip and nodded. But after seeing his passion for his work, after finally coming to the conclusion that I wanted to join the play to be with him, I didn't want him to quit, not after all the hard work he had gone through. Man, no. Even if this is what John decided to do, I knew better than that. He knew better than that. This was a decision made in a momentary fog of sadness. It wasn't something he should stick to, or else he'd regret it down the line. So, I really don't think you should quit. John turned to stare at me blankly, wrapping the sheet around his head so he looked like a nun. It made me want to laugh, but I held it in. You know how much the drama club means to you. And I'm sure Jacques wouldn't want you to quit either. I'm sure he would be on your shoulder right now, giving you a ton of sass. For the first time, I realized one of the reasons Jacques was so important to John. He balanced out John's personality. Jacques was able to quickly nip John's anxiety in the bud with humor, refocusing John's thoughts on Jacques' sass instead of letting him descend into darkness. I knew I couldn't replace Jacques, but maybe. Don't tell me what Jacques would have wanted. How could you even know? You didn't even like him. What? No, I love Jacques. John, I'm just as sad as you are that he's gone. As soon as it was out of my mouth, I wanted to take it back.
No.
That wasn't what I meant to say. Hannah. The warning was clear. I nodded and hung my head. I messed up. That was definitely my fault. But all I wanted to do was make it better. John shouldn't leave the drama club. I glanced up at him. He was wistfully staring out the window, the clouds having finally parted and let in some sunlight. As the sky reflected in his eyes, an idea suddenly hit me. Wasn't there another option? John heaved a heavy sigh, resuming his dejected state. I wasn't sure how you'd take it, but it was worth a try. After all, it was just a suggestion. All he had to do was say no if he didn't want to do it. He wouldn't get upset about a suggestion, would he? John, I was thinking, why don't you just go to the pet store and get an actual bird? One that looks exactly like Jacques, and you can tell everyone they're the same bird, or just pretend everything is the same? John looked at me in surprise, but didn't say anything. I pushed through. I could even go with you if you want, and then you could keep going with the play, and you wouldn't have to quit the drama club, and nobody will ask bad questions. What do you think? That is the stupidest thing to ever say to anybody! Oh my god! Huh! John released something that sounded like laughter, but it wasn't. It definitely wasn't. How could you suggest such a thing, Hannah? Replace my precious Jacques? Like he's a piece of meat? Or an object?
Well,
He is an object. He's a computer program. Or he was, I guess. What the fuck is wrong with you? Oh my god. John slammed his hand on the table and I jumped to my feet, somewhat shaken. Over my dead body, Hannah. I never thought you were this kind of person. I'm glad I found out, though. Can't believe I almost made you a tree in my play. Calm down. It was just a suggestion. If you don't like it, you don't have to do anything about it. Get out of here. This is a sacred space. The likes of you aren't welcome. John glared at me like a patriarch with some 1950s family, and I picked up my bag. I was just trying to help. Out! I stumbled out into the hallway, the door slamming behind me. As much as I knew he wouldn't like the suggestion, that was no reason for him to react the way he did. I was his friend, not an alien in human skin. He should have given me the benefit of the doubt, should have trusted where I was coming from. No. I shook my head. Grief did more than make people sad. It made them sensitive, stressed, volatile. Looking back at the months after my mother died, I did my best to contain my emotions, but even then I lashed out, especially at the people I loved most. John was going through a hard time, and I might have made things worse for him. No longer hungry, I decided to skip lunch and go straight back to class. I could use the extra time for practice anyways. The next day, John was back in class. I didn't feel confident enough to go up to him and talk to him, but it was just as well. Even sitting in class, he evaded my gaze. It was as if I'd physically wounded him by suggesting to replace Jacques, the very possibility of poison to his soul. PBG doted on him, making sure he came to lunch and checking over his homework before he turned it in. Occasionally, he and I made contact from across the room, and he'd give me a thumbs up. Those were my only indications that John was doing okay. But at least John was around. Even if we weren't talking, that put my mind at ease. Third day after John came back to class, we were all gathered in the cafeteria for lunch. For the first time, John wasn't avoiding my gaze, and everybody was unusually cheery. Then Shane said something he never should have said.
Hey.
John, Jacques hasn't been around for a while. What's up with that? My fork dropped onto my tray. Across the way, PBG spilled half his pack of peanuts. I traded looks with him. Well, I mean, you know, sometimes birds need to migrate for a while. Jacques just went on a little vacation. Migration? You mean what birds do for the winter? It's spring now. Heck, it's almost summer. Jacques' species doesn't even do that kind of thing, besides. John scoffed. Well, thank you so much for telling me what I already knew about my own bird. I'm saying that Jacques wanted to take a bit of a break, okay? Don't go question me just because you're such an elitist British know-it-all. That's not what I was doing. It just didn't make any sense. So you thought I was lying? He stood abruptly. PBG put a hand on his shoulder. Hey, dude, calm down. Let's just finish the rest of the meal, eh? Can't believe this. John gathered his tray and stormed out of the room. I watched him go with worry in my heart. He wouldn't want company after that, would he? I turned back to my plate, but PBG cleared his throat. He jerked his head towards the door. Did he think I should go? But every time I tried to help John with his problems, he completely pushed me away. I didn't want to make him angry again. What should I do? Go after him. Sorry, I'll be going on ahead. As I stood and gathered my things, something like relief crossed the others' faces. Just let him do what he needs to do. I'm sure he'll help. The others nodded and murmured their support. I smiled. Thanks, guys. Just before I left, Shane grabbed a hold of my arm. Tell John I'm sorry, too. I will, Shane. Don't worry. Aww. As I dumped my tray, I found myself chuckling. Shane and John were more similar than I thought. They always found a way to say the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time. I found John sitting on a bench just outside of the cafeteria, gazing into the branches of one of Asagao's many well-maintained trees. He didn't look up as I sat down, and I didn't say anything. Instead, I kept him company, listening to the wind gently whistle through the branches. I'm sorry about what I said, Hana. Don't worry about it. It's all water under the bridge. I shouldn't have... I knew you were in a rough place. I should have thought more before I suggested it to you. John nodded slowly. Shane says he's sorry. He doesn't have to be sorry. I'm the one who overreacted. He just says what's on his mind, doesn't he? Yeah, that's what I like about him. There wasn't much either of us could say. I wanted to broach the subject of the pet store again, but I wasn't about to destroy the relative peace of this moment. For the first time, John wasn't mired in grief or denial. For the first time, he was just kind of quiet. I'm sorry I've been so difficult. I shook my head. The circumstances were trying. Honestly, you managed to hold yourself together pretty well. He nodded slowly, then a small smile crossed his lips. Thank you for telling PBG. I didn't... He chuckled softly, and I knew there was no point in denying it. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure there was someone out there looking for you. You did, and you were looking out for me too. Thank you. With a sigh, he stood up, wiggling the creaks out of his legs. I met him back to my dorm. Tell Miss Shizuka I wasn't feeling well as I thought. You really shouldn't skip class this much. You already missed a full day. He shrugged. It's only school. I'll manage. With a half-hearted wave, he disappeared down the lane to Bluebell House. I frowned as I watched him go. At least, he seemed to be getting better. No, that was hard to say for sure. Sometimes I thought he was doing better, but then sometimes there were regressions. But I guess that's just how situations like this went. At least he was self-aware. Self-awareness went a long way when it came to things like this. When I got to the dorm that evening, exhausted after the tension of the day and having to explain to PBG and Shane why John hadn't come to class, all I wanted to do was sit and practice my game. But of course, things were never that easy. Aw, you lose. Thanks for playing. Did you lose again? Yeah, I moved to this new level of difficulty now. It's, way harder. Really? Let me see. Mai climbed into my bed and sat against the back wall, positioned just right so she could see over my shoulder. Okay, go. I stared at her, not really willing to start playing again. I got the feeling that Mai watching me wasn't going to help me get any better. Well, go! With a sigh, I restarted the game. The loading screen cleared and I searched for my first few combos as the game's clock counted down. 3, 2, 1, go! I started off first section of pink block to the left. No, there! The blue one! What? The blue one on the other side! Not entirely sure what she was talking about, I switched to a set of blocks on the other side. Not that one! Oh, shit. Oh, it set off a combo anyway. Look at you go! I gritted my teeth and looked for more combos, trying desperately hard to concentrate. Suddenly, my finger slipped off my phone. Mai was bouncing up and down on my mattress, making it difficult for me to keep things steady. Do you mind? Oh, sorry. I'm just so proud of you, Hana. Yeah. Look at you kicking butt. I frowned. Where was the combo I was going for? I swore I just had it. But by the time I found it again, my opponent found theirs. A herd of blocks were dropped by their monsters onto my field, and I lost the game. It was the fastest game I lost yet. Wow, that's rough. Want to go again? I think I noticed some flaws in your technique. No, I think that's enough for tonight. I have homework to do. Aw, if you say so. I set my phone aside, making a mental note to set aside time for practice when Mai was at volleyball. Mai scooted over to the edge of my bed, patting me on the back with two of her famous back-breaking thumps. Really, I am so proud of you. I know you're going to make history, and I can't wait for it. I smiled in spite of my annoyance.
Yeah.
I hope so. Thanks, Mai. No problem. Thanks for even trying.
Yay!
Thanks to you, I'm finally close to my beloved Jared. Yeah. Why don't you do your homework? Fine, if I have to. I'm glad you're feeling better now too, Hana. Did you say something? Nope, not at all. The next day, John stayed for the entire class period. He still looked worse for wear, a good deal paler and less cheerful than he was before everything went down, but at least he was there. Shane tapped him on the shoulder at the beginning of class, making some kind of hand motions I didn't get. It looked like he was trying to throw a baseball. John motioned back, a slight smile on his face, and Shane finally relaxed, a smile breaking through his usually cold demeanor. I tried to hide my smile, but couldn't. Miss Shizuka kept glancing at me like I was secretly making fun of her or something. And that's why the international governmental bodies agreed to set aside a decent sum of money in case of an alien attack. The combinations of the XCOM plans and the Kobayashi Maru prove that humans... I was so happy to see him finally recovering that I could barely contain myself. As soon as class ended, I bounded over to John, happy as a clam.
John.
Hi. Before he even had a chance to speak, my request burst forth. Do you mind coming on a walk with me? I feel like I haven't gotten to talk to you in a while, and I kind of miss it. Despite the suddenness of my request, John smiled. Of course I will. I've been meaning to talk to you about something anyways. As we gathered our things and left the class together, it was impossible not to notice Mai and Shane's leering faces. I stuck a tongue out at both of them, then skipped out with John. John and I headed out to campus, where we picked a direction and took off. It was different walking around the academy with John, not worrying about getting to class on time or having a particular goal in mind. The buildings that usually looked so oppressive in their scale and orateness, especially compared to my old concrete building of a high school, now seemed to be gleaming soldiers protecting us on our way. Suddenly, the academy was beautiful and vast. Despite a relatively small number of students and the handful of buildings that made up the campus, Asagao owned the land around for miles. The wide, rolling spaces outside of the main hub of the school were common areas kept clean and safe by campus patrol, and that was why so many students felt comfortable resting or eating in the fields nearby. It was kind of like a paradise, wasn't it? John and I walked through one of the fields together, smiling as wind tousled our hair. I really love it out here. Yeah, it's not bad. The smile slid off my face. John seemed preoccupied, and a cloak of disappointment fell around me. The beauty had cast a spell on me, and for some reason I expected John to be acting the way he did when I first met him, when we first took that walk across the Asagao fields together. Of course he wouldn't just magically be better. I, of all people, should know that. I wish there was something I could do to help you. You and Jacques were such good friends. You were there for each other when it mattered the most. Anybody with eyes could tell how much love and friendship you had for each other, even though one of you wasn't technically alive. Honestly, I kind of envied it. I wished I could be as close to someone as you were to Jacques.
Really?
Really? You aren't that close with Mai? Mai and I are close, but, well, I was kind of hoping we could be that close. I said it! I put my hands over my burning cheeks. John laughed. Well, I'm touched, frankly. No, but really, if you and I could keep spending time together, and I could maybe make handling your loss a little easier, that would make me so happy. That's super cheesy. You're all cheese, aren't you? No. John laughed heartily. Coming from anybody else, I'm not sure I'd believe him, but from you, Hana. John slipped his hand into mine. I believe you. John held my hand for the rest of the walk, right up until we went our separate ways in front of Primrose House. As I watched him leave, I held my hand to my chest. It still had his warmth. I wasn't sure where John and I stood regarding our feelings for one another. With everything that happened, it didn't seem the time to burden John with questions about where we were at or where this was going. Certainly feelings were there, even if we never explicitly said anything about them. But I thought that was just as well. The way things were progressing and the way we felt. There were things that didn't need to be said. At least, not yet. Not now. I was sitting in my room with Mai, watching a rather violent show about a group of humans trapped inside giant-sized walls, trying to free themselves from their giant-like enemies when a knock came at my door. Mai paused the episode on her computer, rolling her eyes.
I can't believe this.
Wonderful. Great. Go ahead and get the door. I'm sure it's for you. As Mai hummed the series opening, I hastily crossed to the door and pulled it open. John stood at my door, broad grin on his face. Hearing the music, he peered into my room. I drew the door closed behind me and stepped out into the hallway. What brings you here? Lightning fast, John grabbed my wrist and dragged me down the hall. Shh! John dragged me out and off to one side of Primrose House before finally letting go. I rubbed my wrist, trying to keep a lid on my anger. What was that about? Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we weren't overheard. I thought some more about your proposition. My proposition? Plan New Jacques 0.5. Why 0.5? You don't want to know. Anyways, I thought maybe this could be a thing, right? Maybe this could totally work. Not really, but maybe. We could totally do the thing. We could do this thing. And then I thought, well, why should we stop there? Jacques, God rest his soul, was always the star of any scene he was in. A little scene stealer he was. I'll never be able to match his God-given charm and charisma. No way, no how. But I could at least get a new bird and teach it all of Juliet's lines in the play. I don't quit the play, the show goes on, and it's a touching homage to Jacques. Even if nobody knows the truth about what happened, what do you think? He beamed at me. Hesitantly, very haltingly, I put a hand on his arm. John, don't you think it'd be easier to get an actual human to play Juliet's role? Of course not. What are you, crazy? He patted me on the head. Silly, Hana. You know nothing of showbiz, but it's your innocence that makes you cute. Anyways, I've decided that you are going to go to the pet store with me, and you'll help me pick out a suitably intelligent replacement for my darling Jacques, God rest his soul. But we have to be sneaky about it. Despite the fact that John made this decision independent of any input from me, I was excited. For the first time, John was looking and acting like himself again. The color was back in his face, and he was joking around in that fast-talking way he usually had. There was no way I could turn him down, not after the week he had, and not with how much I wanted to be around him without Jacques' shadow looming heavy over us.
Yeah.
Of course, I offered before, didn't I? Yeah. Great, thanks, Anna. John clamped his hands over mine, shaking them fervently. This will be great. Really, it will. You won't regret this at all. Why would I ever regret it? But John already let go and was heading down the lane.
See you later.
I'll see you this weekend. We'll take the train to the city, so maybe don't wear your uniform. Of course not. Did you take me for an idiot? Maya scooted back over on her bunk to make room for me as I entered the room, hiding something sheepishly behind her back. What have you got there? Definitely not a cookie.
What's up?
How'd it go? Everything good with Mr. Birdman? I think so. I really think so.